Welcome back to Total Money Management. We're going to be talking about the week that was June 9 to 13.
Friday the 13th.
How we doing, gents?
Yes. Did anything bad happen to you yesterday?
I don't know, but if you lived in Tehran, it wasn't a good day.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Did anything bad happen to me yesterday?
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
Oh.
Yeah, Black Cat,
Come on,
you know.
I'm
slow. Come on, mate.
Jeez, he's a bit
All
slow.
right.
Thomas.
Whatever.
Get that coffee into you.
Okay. Okay.
Well, there's a Cold War.
Again.
Hot war, cold war, there's all bloody wars everywhere.
There's about
Everybody's in
19
the wars.
In all seriousness, though, what the hell's going on?
Jesus.
Without spending too much, turning into a news piece.
This is now a politic podcast.
Yeah. We're evolving.
Geopolitics.
Yeah, we've changed.
Geopolitics.
We've changed.
We're
so-
global. We're global. No, but all in seriousness, this is part of the transition that we've been talking about in the new normal, right? The globalization is dead, right? Forget it. It's over. Now you have to sit there for the next 5 to 10 years and go, what the hell's going on?
Hold on to your
Right,
hot
because
seats.
as everybody's alliances now shift, but it really looks like there's China, Russia, Iran, and Pakistan, and maybe a couple of others against America, Australia, England, and Europe, with bits of Asia, Japan, that sort of stuff.
So what you're telling me is I thought things were going up out of control since COVID. Expect things to go up even more.
Well, the market or?
Just goods.
Yes, I would suspect you're going to get inflation, and you're going to. The problem with a lot of this stuff is you can't predict it, right? I'm not making predictions. What I'm doing is saying, here's what's happened over history, right? And if I revisit history, here's how it played out. So again, we've got we've got a thing on it in the lessons from history, right?
And the rapping now.
Yeah, the reason why Jesus, you blokes, a bit early for the jokes, isn't it? The reason why I put that in is because it's really, cycles and history repeats, and that's why I'm old enough to say, well, I know what this, I got a grasp on, I think, what's going on because I lived through the last cycle, right, which was when in the 70s and the 80s, everybody talked about, particularly in the 70s, everybody talked about MAD, right, mutually assured destruction, right, and it was because America and Russia were loading up on nuclear weapons, right, so there was that constant threat of nuclear war that hung over the whole globe.
It's pretty intense. I mean, there was the bombings a couple of days ago, and then oil went up 12%.
Yes, but that's why we say you've got to watch volatility because, Wednesday, how's things? Yeah, good. Thursday, yeah, everything, everything's rolling along. Friday, holy shit, oil's gone up 12% because they bombed Iran. That's the stuff that you cannot really do a lot about in your portfolio, except other than say, oil's really cheap. Okay, I'll buy some oil.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you what the event will be or the catalyst, but what I can say is something will happen. Now, it could be, oil rigs, fall into the ocean and we got a shortage of oil. Yeah. Or, you bomb maybe the third largest oil supplier. Yeah, that'd be a problem.
That'll do it as well.
Yeah,
well,
but it could calm down again.
It probably will. Like that's the thing. We don't have oil in our portfolio because we're expecting somewhere to be bombed.
Yes,
because it's cheap long term.
Tom and I were talking about it before. You've got companies out there like Woodside, Petrobras, a heap of. There was one I looked at the other day. I held that one before. The Italian oil producer. All of them are paying 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% dividends, but no one wants to talk about it. And everyone wants to still talk about AI chips and stuff like that.
It's not sexy yet.
10% dividends aren't exciting.
Well, not when
where's the 10 baggers?
Well, remember last week we went, Tesla's fallen 14%.
Yeah.
In the last week or the last 3 weeks or something, it's gone from like $200 to $300. Now, if you look at Tesla's balance sheet and its earnings performance, it's absolutely an abomination.
Well, that's why the PE ratio is just absolutely crooked.
170.
Yeah.
Right? But you look at that would be justified, Tom, if you said, look, it's, got booming growth, right? Tesla's sales are going backwards.
Yeah.
But now everybody, and of course Musk is out there saying, we're all going to have robo-taxis. Well, so what? If you said to me, I'm gonna replace my Tesla with a robo-taxi. Oh, really? What kind? Oh, probably a Tesla. It'd be like, well, there's no growth in Tesla. It just means I'm not buying a Tesla by myself. I'm just going to use a robo-taxi. But robo-taxis, I think you'll find are garbage. I don't, I might be me. I'm old.
Steve's quote of the week.
I just think all of this stuff is really overhyped, right? And it's, Google is doing good things.
Did you say that about the internet when it came out?
No. In terms of the early internet.
Yeah.
No, but in the late stages, yes. Because, and again, it's not being, all I'm doing is looking at the .com now, and when in the .com you look at the Nifty 50, right? And in the Nifty 50, which was in the 60s, you look at the Great Depression. And if you look at the Great Depression, you look at the 1870s. And all I'm saying is every boom, like you asked that abomination this morning about credit, right? What's that abomination called again, Tom?
Chat GPT.
Chat GPT. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, that thing. You asked that.
Abomination.
Yeah. Well, it's an abomination. But what I'm saying is that's you read those four aspects, right?
Yeah.
Right. Low interest rates, booming credit. What was the other? There were two others.
In terms of credit booms, what typically drives them? Low interest rates, loose lending, asset bubbles, and government or central bank stimulus.
There you go. And what's government or central bank stimulus? Credit.
Yeah.
Right?
Incentives.
Just spending more money.
Yeah.
But, this is why I'm saying that you get the same patterns every time. And if you learn about what's going on now with AI, you'll be up for the next one, which will probably be in some form of commodities, right? Because if you look at history, we're just jumping from one bubble to the next, right? And that's the way it operates.
You just got to know when to get off the ship.
Well, that's why you rebalance. And as revolting as it is, rebalancing when you're making a lot of money, you last not just that bubble, but every single one.
Bubbles.
Because you get old like me and go, I've seen this shit before. I know how this ends. And that, you can make a choice to say, all right, I'm going to jump on AI and, ride the wave. Or generally more, I personally go, I don't know about this. I'm just going to stay out of it.
Yeah.
But I love commodities because I'm looking at it going, man, these things, they're just about giving this stuff away.
Yeah. Good dividends, good growth at these valuations.
Yep. And like you said, Jacob, you imagine when you get a Cold War, the argument that the thing you need is resources, right? That's, you can't have your iPhone if you haven't got rare earth materials, or you haven't got iron ore, or you haven't got aluminium, or you haven't got copper.
And you can't use it if there's no energy to charge the thing up.
That's exactly right. And so that's why the race now is going to be about securing, this is the stuff with rare earths, right? Hang on, we're all relying on a bunch of communists for the rare earths. That's why we're now going, we better pay attention to this stuff. And that's why I'm saying the next hotspot will be Africa. Africa will be an absolute raging hotspot because it's full of commodities and it's largely unexploited, right? Undeveloped.
Well, on US soil, Trump's deploying National Guard on his own folk.
Yeah.
And that's due to the immigration stuff, right? So basically Trump said no more immigrants, or we're going to kick the existing ones out.
The illegal
if
ones,
they're not shouldn't be here properly. If they shouldn't be here, if they're not here legally, I can't talk either. But they've reinstated the Chinese immigration.
Yeah, there's lots of trade-offs going on. See, Trump said you can all get out. Now the farmers went, dude, we got no one to pick the fruit. So Trump went, oh yeah, well, come on, I love these people, they can stay.
Yeah.
But there was, like you say, Trump said, China's cheating off us with the universities, they can all get out. Then when the Chinese said, well, we've got that rare earth material that you guys need, Trump went, oh, okay, well, your Chinese students can stay.
Yeah.
All we're doing, as I say, in the next 2 to 3 years, all we're going to be doing is spending time trading off where we can't, where our supply chain weaknesses are.
Yeah.
So the Americans know they got a problem with rare earths, right? Now they're acting on it, right? So they're tapping the Japanese said to the Americans, we can help you with the rare earths, right? Australia's got rare earths. Okay. The processing is the key, and that's where they're going to have to build it up. This is not stuff you do in 12 months and go, thank God we fixed that problem.
So in the meantime, they'll just be making deals with China until we can outsource it somewhere else.
And then China will be saying, well, we got to get ethane for the semiconductors, and we got to get silicon, and it all comes out of America. Oh shit! Right, okay. So this will be the trade-off, right? And this is what the Chinese will be. If you're a communist country, if you look at the communists, everybody hates them for a start. But the second part is the big thing in communist countries is control, right? You have got to control the public, right? That's why China's got a camera on every 10 metres, right? It's got a social credit system, all of that sort of stuff, right? And that's what the East Germans had, the Stasi, right? They had files on everybody. Everybody spied on everybody. So nobody trusted anybody, right? But what the communists want is information, and China needs the latest information from America to make the latest semiconductors, a lot of stuff. So China's really good at T-shirts, but it's not that good at high-end aircraft engines, right, and stuff like that. So that's where you're going to get all these sorts of trade-offs where they're weak domestically, right? So I remember reading reports in 2011 from the European Union, and I pulled them up during the week, and the American government in 2011 about the problem with rare earths, right? And I remember thinking, man, this is going to go off.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't go anywhere, and it didn't go anywhere because they didn't do anything. They just went, it's cool. China's got them. We're all right. And so
10
now,
years later.
Fast forward to today.
here we are today going, we're in. And that's why I say inflation's coming, because we're going to have to rebuild the whole supply chain again.
100%. But then China will inevitably deal with, they've got all these factories built to produce all this stuff, and as the rest of the world relies on them less and less, overcapacity will come into it as well.
And that's the problem that the communists will have.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I say that we're just going back to the old way where now it's the capitalists versus the communists, right? And the Iranian regime is a dictatorship, right? 90% of Iranians, from what I can read, dislike the government. They want the Iranian regime out of there, right? Because they're the Islamists in charge, and they're the hardcore ones, right? But see, Iran is the weak link in the China-Russia-Iran link, right? So the Israelis have gone after Iran. The Americans are looking at that and going, the Chinese are not going to get much cheap oil out of Iran, right? So there's this is what I mean, it's a whole raft of stuff going on that is that sort of subterfuge.
Yeah.
You get what happened when I was a kid was there was so much information, there was so many things the government did that you didn't hear about, right? And because it was all war.
Well, you didn't have those presence of social media, internet.
Yeah.
The ease of access to all information, ChatGPT, abominations. That didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So things happened, and it was like over a wooden desk and a piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, you had who was the FBI guy? Herbert Hoover. Yeah,
The which guy?
The guy who was in charge of the FBI.
Oh.
He, they had the McCarthyism is what I'm thinking. J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover was in charge of the FBI, right? And McCarthy was a senator. And in those days, there was a true threat of communism, right, in Europe and in parts of America, right? Well, they had to stamp that out. And they didn't do it by being nice, right? They did it by propaganda, but they did it by violence, right?
Propaganda still exists.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. We're back in the wrestle is for people's hearts and minds through social media, right?
Well, and AI plays a huge part in propaganda.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't know what is AI and what's not without the little label that says this is AI.
Well, with the deep fake stuff as well.
Well, that's
you could watch a video and not even know if it's really that person.
Did we talk about that last week? You guys, where I said, you might ring me and say, Steve, can you give me the bank details? I need to go X. And I say, yeah, here they are. And it turns out it's not you.
Yeah, it's just an AI bot somewhere.
Yeah, with your voice.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. You look at that and go, man, you cannot tell what's real anymore. Right? I had some charges taken out of my bank account. I don't know if I told you guys, right? There's these micro amounts, right? $1.99, $2, things like that. And it's coming from a well-known global company, right? And I kept looking at it going, that's not right. I don't have a subscription to them, right? Then I notice and go, oh, hang on, it's coming out every day, right? So I call the bank.
It's not one of the kids buying games.
No, because I always check.
Fortnite.
You guys subscribe to anything?
Of course they're going to say no, aren't they?
But seriously, you can check it anyway. Check it. No, okay. So I write to the bank. Listen, here's the problem. Well, I get onto a chat person, which is really good, and they're really helpful. Right? Kudos. They like right. I will inspect it. No worries. It's only $21. Right? Now, guess what's happened this week?
Go on.
They're back
Again.
last week and this week I'm seeing same charges, right? And they're $1.99, then $2.99, and apparently and I read about this a while ago, what they do is they just skim minute amounts. But if you've got 1 million accounts and you're taking $1 a day, that's $1 million bucks.
Yeah, you never check it either. At that level.
That level, yeah.
It's scalping.
Yeah.
It goes under the fraud radar and all sorts.
And that's why I say there's going to be so much more of that's going to be a real problem. And we may find that there'll be a real backlash against it, right? We might end up going back to bloody pencil and paper and meeting in person because it's just too hard to combat.
Let's wait and see. On Australian soil, though, business conditions have hit a 4.5-year low, but house prices over $1 million.
Hey, all good, folks.
Well done for those that buy houses.
Yeah, get in there, you good thing.
And the ASX hit the all-time high.
Yes.
As well.
ASX is up.
Yeah,
Mate,
Gear's doing fantastically well.
The winter sun is shining. What have we got to complain about?
I know. We're all rich.
The only thing there is, yes, house prices are crazy. And, we were just talking about this over brekkie. If you have a look at 2020, when COVID hit and they dropped rates, prices went from basically 100, if you use that as the benchmark. Perth is now 180. The only one that's gone, well, even Melbourne, which people are complaining about, is still up 20% in 5 years, which is not too bad. But all the others are just batshit crazy.
Well, Vic's Melbourne's the only place that's come down, I think, in the last 12 months.
Yeah, well, there's still properties selling under and in Sydney. But again, it depends on the individual, right? It depends on when you buy it, and but look at the one of that one on the left there. Value of Aussie homes hits record high in 2011. We were worth about $4.5 trillion. Right now it's at 11, going on to 12. I'm telling you, it's not normal. I don't care about immigration. I don't care about bullshit land planning. I'm telling you, this is a bubble.
It's Olympics.
Sorry, Tom, you got
it's
me.
The Olympics.
You got
Come
me.
on now.
An event 8 years out, right? And an event held for 2 weeks.
Yep.
Oh, stop it.
It's definitely the Olympics.
Stop it.
That's what
It's the
ChatGPT
Olympics,
says.
mate. We don't have the Olympics every other year.
Bloody blokes keep winding me up every time you mention property.
Come on now.
Righto.
Average dwelling reaches $1 million.
Next.
Awesome.
Righto. Now, can I go back to history again?
Oh, come on, Matt. Yep.
Yeah,
My favourite subject.
let's turn it back to economics and politics.
Yep.
Yes, and I'll tell you what to buy at the end of the show.
And Doritos.
Why is that? Why do they do that on YouTube? They always say wait till the end,
Because they want you to watch the whole video.
Yeah.
but then you just fast forward to the end.
Yeah, but it gets the view count up and the algorithm shows more people it.
Yeah, I know, but if in the opening minute, And I get this all the time. It's like, and in the end, I'll tell you the fucking secret sauce or something, right? And I go, okay, well, I'll just go to the end.
Yeah, but not everyone's as intelligent as you.
Surely, if I said to you, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to announce the most undervalued stock in the world that's going up 100%. People will go, shit, I'll just go fast forward to the end.
Yeah.
Or they might want to go, oh, if he has that information, what other information would I be missing out on by skipping?
Or they just
Or they
respect
might say,
us enough to watch the
Or
whole
are you
thing.
just telling the listeners to skip this podcast? And wait
Just listen to the first
on
and
now.
last.
Why would you listen to the whole thing? Just wait till the
just-
end. It's all just
Just go to
political fluff.
ChatGPT. It'll tell you what the best stock is for the next 100 fucking years. Righto, lessons from history.
Yeah.
Righto, how are we looking? The reason why I'm banging on about this is because A, I'm old, and B, you young people are going to have to start learning about transition into different regimes, right? And I'm talking to you about why history is important. Okay, what does the US-China relationship end up looking like? I suspect it ends up looking like a lot like the US-Russia relationship, right? So you go back and have a look at history because it's a guide to the future, okay? Now, Russia generally, the idea was at the start, these commies have got this really good system, they're going to be superior to capitalism, right? As it went on further and further, basically that wasn't true. Capitalism won in the end as a means of production. Mm-hmm. Now, part of that was because we were fighting communism, you couldn't have a lot of homeless, people being paid low wages. So the government was stepping in and supporting a lot of the economy. We had a lot of regulations, but I can tell you back then government was like 50% of GDP. Right now it's about 23. And people economists start fainting at 24 or something, right? But government was everywhere. Commonwealth Bank was government, right? Telstra was government. CSL, that great stock, that was government. Qantas, that was government, right? It owned heaps of stuff. Now, fast forward, the communist regime crashes, right? Capitalism starts ruling everything, okay? So, but during the Cold War, as I've got in the document here, Washington and Moscow competed in numerous ways, right? Now, listen to this and tell me it's not today. Over money, okay, and natural resources like oil, over allies, over weapons technology, over influence and prestige, over space exploration, over ideas. That is everything that China and America are fighting about today.
That's every war ever since the last 2,000 years, though. It's just a different skin.
Yeah.
Technology changes, but
on a global scale, yes. Regional wars can be over different things. Like regional wars won't be over prestige or space exploration. But when you get ideological clashes, which we've got at the moment, and they always come off the back of globalization and trade disputes, right?
Yeah.
So my point, what I'm trying to tell you is the US and China might trade, but it will be probably minimal. Mm-hmm. And the US essentially helped the Russians out with, like energy and food sometimes. Because if you look at the communists, the only one you can look at is North Korea, right, as a truly communist nation. And it's a shithole, right? Yeah. And it would be dead and buried if it wasn't for China, right? North Korea
just feeding them.
Yeah, North Korea just exists because the Chinese tolerate it, right? And it's a strategic nuclear armed state. But other than that, communism's a complete failure in terms of resources. So, but again, all I'm pointing out there is this is probably what the relationship's going to look like in the future. There'll be a serious decoupling, but there'll be the Americans and Australia, government will come back into the fray to make sure there's no problems here with people like you've got with Trump.
Yeah.
Right? And immigration and poor people going, we've had a gut full of this, we're just going to loot shops. Why? Because they're goddamn poor. You don't see rich people out there stealing Louis Vuitton bags. You see the poor people doing it. Yeah. Right? And how do you stop that? Well, you give them more money. And what do you do? One of the ways, again, that globalisation stops is you say, we don't want any foreigners. Right? So get them out of here. Right? What do you get? Well, you get a shortage of labour because the demographics is really bad. Okay, what do you get? You get higher wages. What do you get? You get higher inflation.
Yeah.
Right? And you get a race globally for resources. Now, do you want to know that stock?
I'm pausing because I'm trying to think how, like, it doesn't matter if it's 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years that this deglobalization occurs over. I can't imagine a scenario where it's not just a catastrophe.
It will probably be a slow bleed, but it will be, it might be things, Jacob, like you don't get a new iPhone every time they bring one out, right? You might hold on to yours for 3 or 4 years, right? Because it's you just look at it and go, now they're $3,500.
Yeah,
and this is the hard part about being in, like we were talking about asset bubbles, right? You just can't see things changing that quickly. But, like you said at the start, oil up 12. Don't know about that, mate. What in a day? Nah, it's been $60.
yeah, bang.
Bang. Now, who says it's not going to happen again next week? Cause,
it's so cheap. It's so cheap.
And it ends up going up.
Yeah.
Right?
Doesn't matter what it is. It's just it's a money flow. Like, this is cheap. Something has happened. Everyone rushes into it.
That's what I say to people. I can't tell you what the catalyst is because I don't goddamn know.
Yep.
Neither does anybody. But what I can say is it's really cheap, and history shows that it gets expensive, and then history shows when it's expensive, it becomes very cheap. That's the way things cycle. That's human behaviour, right? And that's what we're sitting on the cusp of at the moment. All of that sort of stuff. And it just, look, in all seriousness, I just keep looking at it going, oh, man. You got Russia and Ukraine at each other, right? You've got Israel and Iran. So,
you got the last 5 years. We've had COVID, Russia, Ukraine, wars popping up everywhere. Like now, you see a headline going, oh, these guys are at war, and you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like it's just another one.
As long as it's not here.
Yeah, it's like a, and you've got Trump and Elon publicly arguing. It's just like, it feels like a South Park episode. Like it just feels like, an absolute zoo.
Yep.
Markets doing the craziest stuff, that V-shaped recovery back in COVID and, the
latest
volatility. Oh, it's madness.
Well, that's what happens.
I know, but it's just the new normal. Like maybe just
the new
things are
normal
chaotic now.
Well,
that's just the new normal.
The new normal is volatility.
Yeah, not just markets.
Right? That's what I mean, volatility. You need to learn how to do things like hedging or how to look at your portfolio and say, okay, maybe I need a bit of gold. Oh, maybe I need a bit of Bitcoin. Because, the volatility is unpredictable.
Can we just stop and record that?
Yeah, Steve just said that.
Maybe we need a bit of Bitcoin.
but I've always been agnostic about it. But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Maybe some Doge.
Maybe what's that? Maybe what?
Maybe some Dogecoin.
Ah, Jesus.
All right, so lesson of the week. You got emerging markets. So this chart here, for those that follow the week that was, and we send it out every Saturday. This is from the Novel Investor. It's a great resource to see all things like sectors, emerging markets, established markets, and you can see the tickers and everything as well. And every year he maps out, or twice a year maybe, he maps out the percentage gains or losses on each one of those. So check it out, novelinvestor.com.
And we're killing it.
We are.
Which we'll tell subscribers this Thursday night in our coaching call.
Oh, are we gonna go through well 2 and well 3 returns?
Yeah, haven't you blokes read the slides? Oh my God.
Right,
you boys are entertained after school, right? Okay, yes, but the answer is generally, we've argued that emerging markets are going to be good. One is they've got a lot of commodities. The other place that's going to be very good, and I'll show you on Thursday night, is Australia. Yeah, because we're a first world country with a third world economy, i.e. we've got lots of commodities. So I think that's why I say, and Australia's gone bugger all in 15 years. So
it's time.
Well, I think so, yeah. Everything eventually gets its day in the sun, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Tech, consumer staples.
Greece.
So yeah, apart from poor old Greece, yeah. Yeah, apart from Greece, yeah. Nice place.
It's beautiful. Just I wouldn't really invest there.
Netanyahu is there at the moment.
Is he?
I don't know why. Something going on there.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough war talk.
Yeah,
Let's talk investing.
Yeah, but hot topics at the minute. Small cap stocks. I mean, you, Steve, I won't say you have been talking about small caps for a while, particularly because they're undervalued, right?
Yeah, I think that there's this is why I think getting the macro picture is really important, because large caps have had large cap growth stocks have had a superior 15 years, no argument. But why did they do well? They did well because we're in a globalized world, right? So you imagine if I said to you, sorry, is that my daughter or something? If I said to you, Tom,
the classic Steve's
no
kids
caller
ringing
ID. It'll be
on
probably
a podcast recording.
What, Mr. Netanyahu? Don't say what about Donald. No, in all seriousness, small caps will probably come back, because when the world shrinks, it would be like me saying to you, Tom, okay, you can't go to Woolies anymore. You've got to get your fruit from the fruiterer and, your milk from the milkman, right? So, in other words, your world shrinks, and therefore small caps get a better chance because you're no longer buying everything off,
the same.
Amazon, right? You order a book from Poland or Britain or something, right? So that's where it comes more home, and that's where you get more small cap stuff. Plus, the small caps will probably feed in to the government procurement stuff. So when the government says, we want to
fit the mould.
Yeah, well, the government will say to Austral, righto, we want you to build a ship, right? But it's got to have 75% Australian content. So Austral says, oh, all right, well, we need a bloke to build widgets and, motors and blah, 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 right? And that's where the small caps get an opportunity to come back.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've seen that already, I think, like in the last 12 months.
Yeah, there's a little bit, it's starting to come good again.
And the second one is Latin America's emerging markets. We've been talking about emerging markets for a long, long time, but more specifically Latin America. And there's a little table down here. Most of them are Latin America. Yeah,
they're mostly cheap emerging markets. They're the top 10 cheap Cape countries.
Colombia, Brazil, Thailand, Poland, Hong Kong, Chile, Turkey, Austria, Portugal, Korea.
There's only really two there that are advanced or developed. Most of them are emerging, and when you look at them, you've got Turkey on 7, Brazil on 9, Colombia on 10, Korea on 11. That's Poland on 10. They're really cheap, right? They're really cheap.
Turkey's still a favourite of yours,
mate. I love Turkey.
Big fan.
If you know how to handle a turkey, you do quite well.
Jeez, there's a few lines in there.
Steve's turkey returns are off the charts.
Yeah. Hit me with a feather. Righto. So all of those, that's why I'm saying, America, and I say this, America's expensive, like the Cape's now back at 37. The dividend yield is like 1.2 or 1.7 or something, right? Which is awful. It's really, really bad. But there are great places like Brazil, energy, that are paying really solid dividends, and they're really, really cheap, right? And if you've got a patient attitude, you can just, you can't buy Woodside, get a 9% dividend and then say, oh, yeah, but Steve, it hasn't gone up in the last 3 weeks. It's like, I know, but you're still getting 9% a year.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to take a little bit of a longer term or a patient approach. But
generally, when you're buying out of favour, though, like we probably say in almost every episode, eventually they'll be in favour again, and then that's when it can go really nuts and do a lot for your portfolio.
Yeah. Well, you just can't see it, but you've got to, again, why we talk about being systematic, right? And if you study history, things get cheap, then they get expensive, then they get cheap again. Right, so that's just the way it turns. And I think commodities are already outperforming this year. And I think they won't outperform every single year, but I think over the next decade you'll find they do quite well. And I think you'll find, to be quite honest, tech will fade like it did with the internet bubble.
Not because it's less useful, just because they're so insanely overvalued.
Yeah, yeah. And you look at the statements about it, Tom. I mean, some of them are ridiculous. You know, like, oh, they're going to put 70% of white-collar workers out of work. It's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, government's going to sit around and watch everyone get unemployed. Yeah, okay, of course they are. I mean, you know, that's just ridiculous.
More people to work in the factories that we need to get going.
Yeah, that I can tell you, you know, if Jim Rogers, who's a commodities guy, right? He was George Soros's partner and made, you know, 30% a year for 15 years or something. He said this a while ago. He said, if you want to get a good job, learn to drive a tractor. And what he was saying was the average age of farmers is about 55 to 60, right? i.e., listen, guys, there's a lot of old people running the farm and they're going to get so old that they're not going to be able to do it anymore.
And the kids don't want to pick it up.
And the kids want to go, I'm not living at Dalby. What, for wheat? No way. I'm going into the city to be an influencer or, you know, to study accounting or law or something, right? Who wants to live out the back of Bullamakanka with the, you know, the wheat and the corn and the insects?
It sounds nice, actually, to be honest.
Well, it does to me, but, you know, hey, I'm old. But, that, you know, that's what I mean, that you get these ebbs and flows, right? And what we're coming into is a shortage of young people, right? That's why I said a few months ago, you guys are going to have it made. You can't see it now, but I'm telling you, you're going to do really well because there's a shortage of people.
And we're just jets.
What's that?
And we're just jets in general.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But even my son, you know, my son's got a really good job, and they said to him, you know, listen, he's been there 4 months, right? He's getting really good pay. He's 18, right? He's not doing rocket science stuff, but he is good at it. But they said to him, listen, we're going to apply. We're looking for somebody, and if we don't find them in a month, we'll upgrade you. And he's going to get a 30% pay rise.
What a legend. Shout out to Maxie, who I know listens to this.
Well done, mate.
Yeah.
He wrote to me at 4 a.m. and said, Dad, I'm not coming home tonight.
Right. Wonder what he's doing at 18.
So I wrote back. And he said, I'm staying at my mate's place because I can't get an Uber. Right? And I wrote back at 6 and went, what? Can't get I thought an Uber would be pretty cheap at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Let him be a bloke. All right, let's leave it there. Just a quick one. If you listen to the podcast, leave us a review on Spotify or Apple.
Don't swear either, folks.
Yeah, it helps us get out there to people that haven't discovered us yet, so it'd be much appreciated. Other than that, we shall see you all next week.
Cheers, folks.
Cheers.
As always, remember, we don't provide financial advice.